If you want to be a strong player on the open field in Rise of Kingdoms, whether you're a free-to-play or an absolute whale player, the thing that matters the most has to be your commanders. If you have bad commanders, you're just going to do bad on the open field. It's really just simple as that. And in today's video, I'm going to be discussing commander investment plans, how to decide what do you invest in, what do you not invest in, which commanders are going to suit your account, which ones are not going to suit your account. So if you want to know about why I think commander investing has changed recently and how to actually maximize your value for each gold head you use, because as a free-to-play player, they're very far and few between, but they're very important, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, let's just start off today's video by quickly explaining why I think commander investing has changed, because before this video, I think that commander investing was relatively simple. Whatever commanders were the newest and strongest at the moment, if you didn't have them, you just want to try and invest in them, no matter what. You just want to try and get those new commanders to a good usable state, because commanders were much easier to replace, because every 3 months or so, maybe even 2 months, we would see more commanders come out, and by the time that happened, you might have had one commander close to expertise or half expertise, and that would be perfectly fine. You could half expertise, then get the next commander, and you'd probably be able to expertise a commander in between. But now, really, like, let's just give an example. Gorgo came out. She hasn't been out for 3 Mightiest Governor cycles, and we've already been announced that new archers are coming to the game. So just commander release speed right now is really, really insane, and because of that, the way you invest in commanders has to change, because as a free-to-play and a low spender especially, you can't afford to do that anymore, where you just pick the new strongest commander and invest in them to some capacity. Because if that was what you do, actually like still did it now, what would happen is you're going to have a ton of underleveled commanders who by the time more commanders release are much weaker. And the reason that's a really big issue is because as a free-to-play player, you can't afford to have many dud commanders. The only time you get to bench a commander is like when they've been in your Murderball for like a year or so, maybe even 2 years. Like, I'm just going to bench my Nebu, and he's only 5512, and he's going to be replaced with the newest commander. So when you're investing right now, especially as a mixed troop free-to-play low spender, I think the priorities have 100% changed with the amount of commanders that are just being released and how strong some of them really are. Like, some of them are almost essential investments, and if you invest in the wrong commanders that release, you're going to notice, especially now with the faster releases, you just make absolutely horrible decisions which just destroy your account. Now, as do not destroy your account, let's just discuss some of the factors you need to consider when you're investing in commanders. What do you need to do when you decide on an investment? And in order of the most important things when you're looking for an investment, we'll start off with the most important in my opinion, and this is your current Murderball performance. Usually this would come in at a lower rank, because before you'd just be able to max out any commander you really wanted and just say, all right, that's going to be a 10-20% improvement on my Murderball. So let's say right now I was running a Boudica YSG and Zulang drops, and yes, Zulang is an amazing commander, but let's say in this world Zulang's only maybe 20% better than YSG, and I could go and get him to 5551 and he'd be better than YSG. That's basically how it would work. But my Boudica YSG was not struggling, and the thing is, now you have to be much more picky with the commanders you invest in. If you were running that Boudica YSG and Zulang came out and Zulang was only 20% better, he wasn't absolutely game breaking, then you don't want to get a new commander to go with your Boudica. You have to stick with that Boudica YSG, because currently with commander investments, you can only really choose those groundbreaking commanders. And also, you can only choose commanders that will be somewhat of a replacement to your Murderball. They have to replace something. So if I had a Boudica with an Artemisia, for example, and that was my only March, and they released, let's just say as an example, a Tamiris at the time, then I'm not going to get Tamiris, because it's not going to be a good replacement to my Artemisia. And in a Murderball situation where you maybe already have 3 to 5 marches, at the moment, it's really difficult to build another March, because you're going to end up running suboptimal commanders. So what you should be doing right now is assessing your current Murderball performance, which commanders are doing really well, which commanders are doing really bad, or just worse than the other commanders by a large margin, and look to replace those commanders. Don't look to replace other commanders or add extra commanders, because right now adding commanders is really difficult with how expensive they are to get to a good level and how quick they're releasing. And replacing commanders, or even just trying to level up commanders which are performing well already, is something that your account does not need. So if you have, let's say, a 5515 Henry and you find that he's absolutely fine and he's just doing perfectly alright, don't go for his expertise, because you're going to notice it's just going to screw you over in the long run. You're going to expertise him, that's great. He's going to do better now, but maybe in half a year when they release a whole new archer cycle, because they are releasing pretty much that quickly, you're going to notice your Henry is once again falling behind that game. So if you save those sculptures, you'd be able to put them into the newer commanders if you needed those commanders, and you'd be able to work on your Murderball more. And especially with newer commander releases being so game-changing like Lao Che, if you saved up those gold heads and maybe you didn't invest in one of the commanders, or you just noticed my Murderball right now is performing pretty good, it's maybe 20% weaker than the meta Murderball, then there's no point upgrading it until something comes out that's going to be a massive replacement or a huge change to a Murderball that is very, very beneficial, because you can't afford to really be expertising any commander you want anymore. The second most important thing to look at when investing in commanders right now is just the commander's potential. How are they going to perform on the open field right now, or even up to 3 years from now? Because if you're looking to make long-term investments that last very long and are going to give your Murderball the most amount of value as possible, so you don't have to replace commanders soon, you don't have to get rid of commanders early, you need commanders with good potential. And really simply, you want to be looking for commanders with some sort of unique mechanic, or something that makes them like, wow, that commander would be really difficult to replace because they have something that pretty much no other commanders have. So for example, Lao Che, currently one of the only smite damage commanders in the game. He has a 5-target AoE, he reduces march speed, he's got a ton of stats in his kit, he's just an all-round really unique commander, and his expertise has another unique thing to it. So Lao Che, first example, pretty much the prime example of what amazing commander potential would look like. It means they've got great investment right now, and they're performing really well right now, and they will probably be performing really well in the future, or they will synergize really well with some future commanders, because if you choose the right commanders, they can still last you up to a year, maybe even 2 years. Like, for example, Nevsky is probably going on almost 2 years, maybe 1 year now, maybe 1.5 years, and he's still pretty much the cavalry meta. So anyone who chose Nevsky, which is a lot of players, made a great choice, because he is really, really strong, because his commander potential is just great. And the same thing can be said with a lot of current commanders. Lao Che, Joan Prime, maybe not as much as Lao Che, but still a good commander. So when you look at these commanders and their potential for the future, that is what you want to be really looking at when you're choosing a commander to invest in. If they have good potential and they're a good replacement or a good addition to your Murderball in some way, then you can consider investing in them, and especially if you really need the commander of that type. So for example, if Herman Prime is a good archer primary, I'm pretty much guaranteed to replace my Nebu, because my Nebu, not a very good commander, and I can almost guarantee you Herman Prime is going to have some good investment potential in him. So when we look at a commander, they need to have really good long-term potential. And a recent example where this wasn't really the case, you could say Hao Bing is not the best long-term potential, because when you look at his kit, there is a lot of damage in there. Yes, a ton of damage. Like, it's absolutely insane. Issue with Hao Bing though, he is very damage oriented. He doesn't really have many debuffs. It's all just pretty much damage, rage cost reduction, but we've seen that before. It's not very unique. And yes, he's currently a really strong commander. And a few months ago, I would have said, yes, 100% invest in him if you're a Cav main. But right now, he maybe isn't needed in a Murderball. If you already have a Zhang Yu, you probably don't even want to go and get a Hao Bing, because Zhang Yu is going to be adequate for now. Hao Bing is, yes, going to be better than Zhang Yu, but because you can't afford to invest in a Hao Bing at the risk of there being a meta commander for another troop type, or even a meta cavalry commander, he's a commander who may not need to be a replacement, and also doesn't have amazing investment potential. So you want to look for those commanders with lots of investment potential. They got good debuffs, good stats, something unique, something that's going to be important to your Murderball and a replacement to other commanders. They're the ones you want to invest in. But commanders with fairly generic kits that we've seen before and you can easily remake are the commanders you don't really want to go for. So that's what I'd keep an eye out for. Look for those unique commanders with something we've never really seen before, or some really unique mechanic that probably won't be reused for quite a while, and you're going to be making better choices by doing that, because if they replace something in your Murderball that's going to give you an overall upgrade and they bring some unique utility, they're pretty much going to be one of the better investments. So keep your eye out for unique utility that's going to bring your Murderball value if you want to get your gold heads value as well. The third most important consideration when you're looking to invest in a commander is the time of investing in that commander. And there's 3 factors under that category itself. The first thing when you're looking at the time of investing is just the current placement of your account. Are you in KVK right now? Are you basically ending a KVK? Like, have you just done Kingsland and you don't really need more commanders because you just did Kingsland? what's the point of getting more commanders? Or are you just about to enter a KVK, which is a more optimal time to invest? Because if you're about to enter your first fight or enter your first KVK, then being able to use those gold heads to give your Murderball that upgrade before you start fighting other players is a good time. And it's a good time to activate your resources because you know, okay, I'm going to get value from these commanders because even if a new better commander releases, I'm in fighting anyways. I'm still going to be able to use these other commanders because often you'll notice within a full KVK cycle, you're probably going to see another new commander release. And if you've invested in other commanders before you've even entered KVK, by the time you enter, there might be a new commander, a new shiny strong commander. Like for example, right now, me not even in KVK yet. Yes, we've just registered, but not in KVK. I shouldn't be investing any gold heads, especially since the current timing in game itself, knowing that more archer commanders are releasing, is not currently in my favor. So if I were a cav main, for example, and maybe I used an archer march and an infantry march, I'm not in KVK, I don't desperately need those commanders. I don't really need to invest in them. Like, I'm not going to go expertise my Joan when I know archers are around the corner, and I don't need her right now. So your current in-game timing when you're in KVK, when you need to just enter combat, is when you should really be investing. Wait for yourself to be right in like just before the pass 4 battle and then invest. And especially if you know there's new commanders coming to the game like we do right now, don't invest in any commanders if you have to. So the only time you would invest is if you really need a commander, you're like a rally leader or something. That's the only time you would invest at this point when we know there's going to be new commanders. We don't know what they're like. We don't know if they're going to be absolutely game breaking. We have to wait and see. So only invest if the current timing for you is good and the current in-game climate for commander releasing is also good. So often, just after a commander release for one troop type, it's a good time to invest in that troop type. But if you're looking to invest in, let's say, an archer march right now, horrible timing. Wait for the new commanders to release, and then you're in a better position. Even if you're in KVK right now, you probably don't want to invest in an archer march until we see the new commanders. Because if you invest in, let's say, Boudica Prime, and Herman Prime doesn't work well with her, and maybe even Herman Prime is a replacement to Boudica Prime, that's just a really bad investment, and you're screwing yourself over. So what I would do is wait for the new archer commanders to release, then invest in them, or invest in another troop type like infantry who just released are a really good investment right now since we know Gorgo and Lao Che aren't going anywhere. They're the newest commanders right now, and infantry came out literally like 3 weeks ago. So you can invest in infantry right now, it's a good choice, but investing in archers right now wouldn't be a good choice because the in-game investment climate is not as good, and especially if you don't need those commanders like I said before, that is also not a good choice. The other thing to consider with the timing of investment is not necessarily the actual timing, but more the age of the commander. Are they a bit older, like maybe they're around a year to 2 years old, or are they a younger commander, a newer commander, a fresher commander? Because we know Lilith likes to release stronger commanders. It's just something they're going to do. They have to make money, they have to get people to invest in the commander somehow. So adding commanders who are stronger, more powerful, more furious, something that's going to change the meta, is what they want to do. So for example, Lao Che right now, like I said before, prime investment. He's a brand new commander, he's just released, he's absolutely destroying it on the open field, he's got so much potential for the future. But then we look at maybe a 2-year-old infantry commander like Pakal, and yes, he's still decent on the open field, he's not as good as he used to be, but he's still good, he's still usable, he works well in some murderballs, but he's just an older commander, and as the years go on and as maybe a year or two passes, he's going to really fall out the meta because right now he's barely hanging on. Yes, he's good, but he's not really in that meta position. So you don't want to invest in those commanders who are older, especially right now. Even William, a commander who I've advocated for before, might not be the best investment right now because they're getting commanders so quickly. I'm sure they're going to try and capitalize on making a better version of William. So try and look at commander age. If they're over like 2 years old, I wouldn't really invest in them unless you can purchase them in the daily special offer, because if you can do that, then they're not the worst investment if you're willing to spend that money, because let's say William from the daily special offer is a good choice. But if they're not in there and they're a really old commander or a commander that's just not really working that well and hasn't aged too well, like Gilgamesh, then you would try and steer clear of them. Don't go for commanders which are older and not performing as amazing as they used to, because that's only pretty much downhill from there. Rarely do we see commanders be brought back from the dead until when they're extremely old and they get a relic. So don't invest in those commanders which are like semi-old and not very strong. Only wait for the new shiny meta commanders before you make your decision to invest, because always investing in the meta is just better. Now, the final major factor when investing in commanders, which is extremely important all the time, is just your legendary commander sculpture count. This is probably the least important thing, but it does play a role on what you should be doing, because if you have low legendary commander sculptures, so for example, if I had 150 legendary commander sculptures right now and a new cavalry commander released, even if my calves maybe need an upgrade, I might actually want to skip this commander cycle, because if I notice that my commander sculptures are very low, I don't really have a way to gain a lot very soon, then there's no point investing in a commander who's not going to A, bring you instant value, and is B, going to take away your gold heads and pretty much just stash them for themselves. So what you want to do is really only invest in a commander when you've got a large amount of gold heads on hand, whether it be 690 to instantly expertise a commander on release. Not saying you should always expertise if you want to invest, but if they are worth the expertise, it's always good to have that many sculptures. But more just saying having 5511 at least worth, so like 300 legendary commander sculptures or more is a good place to be sitting when you really want to make an investment, because if you can afford that 300 commander sculpture mark, you'll be in a good position to invest in that commander when it releases and get them to a decent level, and then still start saving up for the next commander release, which could be very, very strong, because you want to always be ready for that situation where Lilith releases something absolutely game-breaking, like an Attila Takeda, which on its release just destroyed everything, or Guan Yu, which on his release was overpowered. So you want to make sure you've got the gold heads to be prepared for that situation, at least enough gold heads to expertise the newer commander that just released within maybe a month or two, because by the time that month is over, we're probably going to see more commanders. So make sure you have enough gold heads to get a commander near expertise or near the level you want within a maximum of 1 month. So if you have 400 gold heads and you want to expertise a commander, I would say try and get around 500 if you're going to expertise, or at least 450 at the minimum, because in 1 month you'll be able to expertise them. But if you don't have around 450 gold heads, then within 1 month you're not going to get close to that expertise, and they're not going to be at a good enough skill level, and they're just going to suck up all your gold heads, and then a new overpowered commander is going to release and you can't afford them, and it's just all going to go really, really bad. So with your commander sculptures, they are a lower priority, so if you notice a commander is really, really amazing and you don't have enough sculptures yet, you might still want to invest in them, you may still make that choice, but just make sure if they're not something you 100% need, then try and save those sculptures for the next release, or at least stash them up a little bit more and see what the next commanders may be like before you invest in that commander. So if you were looking to invest in Joan Prime and you only had 50 gold sculptures at the time of a release, maybe just wait for the next release of commanders and then go back and like, okay, Joan Prime is definitely better investment for me right now than these newer commanders, and I can afford with the current gold heads I've saved up to invest in her instead. So try and look at the current meta situation, try and assess which commanders are coming out and your Murderball needs compared to your gold heads as well, because if you've got a good amount of gold heads, you can pretty much invest in whatever you want as long as you're able to keep that gold head number up, because if it goes down, then if good commanders release, you're going to be in a very difficult situation. Now, one last thing that came to my mind when I'm thinking about commander investment, which I didn't really mention before, is look for commander testing, because commander testing results, whether it be from someone in your own kingdom or even someone on YouTube, is going to be a really good way to gauge how a commander is going to perform, because a lot of people say testing results are useless, they don't do commanders justice, but they're a really good baseline. If you see someone with a testing result in Ark of Osiris and that commander is getting destroyed by everything, the chances are on the open field it's going to be very similar, maybe plus or minus 20% maximum on the Sev wound. So when you look at testing results, they can be a justification as to whether or not you invest in a commander, because if one commander's testing results were average at best, there is a good chance that when they fully release into the game and they're fully on the open field and everyone's using them, that commander is not going to do as well. So just a quick side note, just to always look at those testing results, try and see which commanders will perform well on the open field, try and make your own self-judgment. Don't just read off the skills and make your own decision like, okay, yeah, their skill looks pretty good. I would always look to A, someone who's already made the decision to expertise them, or B, look for someone who's making the decision to expertise and test that commander, because that's always going to be the best way to find out more about that commander. Even if they released a while ago, you can usually find a video about them, whether it be, let's say, about Cyrus. And if you can't find a video on the commander, try and look in one of those really massive KVKs, let's say a 1960 KVK, study their Murderball and try spot someone using the commander. If you message them for reports, there's a chance that they will give you those reports, because I was looking around for Cyrus reports and I got a bunch, and it's probably one of the reasons I did expertise him. So just look around for testing results, whether it be actual open field testing from other KVKs or just look around in Ark of Osiris and try find testing results there. So if you are looking to invest in a commander, I would always look for some good testing that's going to give you not maybe the most accurate picture, but a semi-accurate picture of how a commander is going to perform on the open field. Now, overall, with all these commander releases and how fast they're coming to the game and all this stuff, it is really scrutinous the process you have to go through to decide which commanders to invest in. Because if it were me personally, I would just say invest in whatever you think is going to be the most fun. But right now, if you want to get a good open field performance and you find that fun, it is really difficult to invest in a lot of the current commanders. So really, what I have to say overall is the current commander releasing is just bad. And I've made videos on that before, and there's too many commanders and they're coming too quickly. But the truth is, they're probably not going to slow down. So what we have to do is just adapt our investment plan. So hopefully today's video gave you guys some value in that regard, taught you what to do with the new investing and try to invest to at least put yourself in a better position against all of these quick commander releases. If you want to know more about upcoming commander releases as well, or you just want to talk about which commanders you should invest in and ask for real feedback, join my Archer Syndicate Discord server. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. Trust me, it's a great place to go to ask any questions. I try to be active there as much as I can. I also send my new videos there, so if you ever want to be able to be notified whenever my videos come out, join that server. It's a great way to do it. And whenever I'm live, which is a bit rare nowadays, but if I am live, you will see my live streams also go live in that server. So if you want to be able to chat with fellow channel members, chat with me, or see my content as it releases, you want to go to the Discord server, pinned comment and in the description. Now I just want to say thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one.